The Program Information window is used to load a new program or view the header information, compile date, and software versions used for the current program. This information may be useful if you are trying to determine which version of the program is loaded on the processor or when it was created. If we press the Function Access button, we are able to see more information about the loaded program, load a new program to the internal or compact flash, and stop, restart, erase, or retrieve the program on the processor. In order to load a new program, use the Browse button to find your compiled program's SPZ file. Determine if you are loading it to the internal flash or a compact flash drive, if available, and then click Send. Once finished, close this window and the system information should update to new program details. If not, you can always press the Refresh button or F5. One more thing worth mentioning is the program retrieval process. Keep in mind that retrieving the program will pull off the compiled SPZ file, not the raw source code SMW file. You will be able to save it, load it into a different processor, or reload it if you make changes that don't work, but you will not be able to open this file in Simple and modify it. From the Ethernet settings window, I can see what my IP address or addresses are, plus the MAC address and link status. Since this is a new processor, we will need to assign an address. So we'll press the Function Access button, and here you'll see that I have a LAN A and LAN B tab, because I have a 2-port C2 eNet2 card in this processor. Port A is my WAN or Wide Area Network port, and port B is the LAN or Local Area Network. Here is where I can enable DHCP in order to retrieve an IP address from a network server based on my host name, or else uncheck the Enable box to manually enter a static address. When we assign an address manually, we need to enter the IP address, the subnet mask, and the default router address. One other step you can do from this window is to set a console password. This will prompt anyone who tries to connect using the IP address for a password before they can get in and change anything. If you are connected serially, we assume you are supposed to be there and therefore do not require a password. Also, if you don't know what the password is, you can change or disable it if you are connected via RS-232. If you make any changes to the IP address, once you press OK or Apply, the processor will reboot. Then you can connect using the IP address for quicker download and response times. From the CrestNet Devices pane, we can see all of the touch panels, keypads, and other Crestron devices that are connected to the processor via the CrestNet bus, plus their CrestNet IDs and firmware versions. Here is where we can make sure that all of the devices are showing up at the correct IDs. Notice that there is no Function Access button on this pane. If we need to talk to these devices, we will need to use a network device tree, which is shown in a separate chapter. Or, for CrestNet devices that support the System Information tool, use the indirect connection method discussed in the Address Book chapter. The internal memory pane shows us the amount of flash memory that is being used by the program and web pages. From the Function Access window, we can compact the memory if things start running a little slow, or we can initialize the processor, which will set the file system back to factory defaults and erase the program. The NVRAM usage shows us how much of the reserved space has been used for non-volatile data. Before loading a program that will write to the NVRAM disk space, we will need to enable the space and specify the size. This we do by using the Functions pull-down menu and selecting NVRAM disk. Once enabled, specify 64 or 128 kilobytes depending on the space required. From here you can also clear or compact the NVRAM disk space. The device ID for a processor will usually be ID 02. This tells the processor that it is the master in the system. If, however, this processor has been denoted as a CrestNet slave, you would change this ID to match the hardware definition in your program. If it is a touch panel or other device, this will show the current CrestNet ID. Also, on devices that have the feature enabled in their firmware, the TSID and serial numbers will show up in this pane as well. Here we have the ever-important error log. As the name implies, this is where we look for problems if the error or message LED on the unit is lit. Only the first 100 most current errors will show, but at the end of the list you can see the total number logged, in case there are more. The list uses a first-in, first-out method. You also have the ability to save the file to your computer, should you need it as a reference. Once you have fixed any problems that have shown up, press the Clear Error Log and Device button. If there is a memory expansion card installed, we can see the usage statistics in the Compact Flash pane. The Compact Flash card will be used for storing the program, web pages, and user files if the internal memory is not sufficient. Turning on the Auto Run feature means that the processor will boot up using the program that is on the Compact Flash card. Then if the card fails or is removed, the processor will switch to running the program stored in the internal memory if there's one present. The system clock field lets us change the time in the processor. Be sure to set this to the proper time if the processor is being shipped to a different time zone than where you are. Otherwise, you can click Synchronize Time with PC, and it will grab the time from your computer now and every time you connect to it. From the IP table window, you can manually add or delete entries from the Ethernet list on the processor or other device, as well as view the current online status. When you load a simple program with Ethernet devices and say yes to sending the default IP table, this is done for you automatically. However, if there is a touch panel or iDock that needs to communicate via Ethernet, you will need to come here and enter in its IP ID and the controller's address. For instance, to configure the CEN iDock to connect to the Pro 2, connect the System Info tool to the iDock and select the iDock's IP table field. Click the Add Entry button. Then select the IP ID as defined in your simple program. Next, enter the master processor's IP address. Confirm that the device type is set to master, as this is where it will receive its commands from, and click OK. The entry we just added appears in red, indicating that it has not yet been sent to the device, so click the Send to Device button. The device will reboot and then show the new IP table. If you need more information on this process, IP tables are covered more thoroughly in the networking tutorial.